Good afternoon to you. Mark Stott with HurricaneTrack here. It is now Monday, the 19th of August, 2024. Back from Bermuda, and what an adventure that was. I'll talk about it just a little bit. But the main topic today, we're about midway through the hurricane season, at least from a calendar perspective. However, historically speaking, we have much of the hurricane season's activity still in front of us. So I figured let's take a look at the seasonal forecasts, how those are doing, where we've come from, and where I think we're going to be headed over the next few months here. And then, like I said, I'll tell you a little bit about my trip to Bermuda. Got a few people I want to thank. And as a side note, neighbors behind me building something, so you're probably going to hear a bandsaw and some hammering. What can I do? I can't tell them to stop just for me. I'm just a guy with a website, right? Great to have you along with me. Let's get started with my website and all. In the Atlantic Basin, we still have Hurricane Ernesto. Ernesto, of course, passed over Bermuda. I was in the eye of it. Pretty remarkable adventure. I'll talk about it more in a moment. It went through the Caribbean before that, of course, leaving a lot of people without power. Ernesto did have the swells that I was telling you about. I warned you. I told you those were coming, and they certainly did. We had damage. We had loss of life, which is very unfortunate. Now Ernesto, up in the North Atlantic, top winds 90 miles per hour. It could have been a little bit stronger than that over the last, 12 to 14 hours or so, taking advantage of better conditions up there in the far North Atlantic. Who would have thunk it? But there it is. Meanwhile, what's happening in the East Pac? Holy cow! We've got Gilma, and then Gilma is fast being encroached upon by a new area of disturbed weather, only 20% chance of development. We have the whole, there's the saw, we have the whole color spectrum out here that the Hurricane Center uses. Yellow, the orange here for medium possibility, probability, whatever, and then the red here, of course. And that extends over to the Central Pacific. Haven't shown this in a while. A couple of areas might make things interesting for Hawaii, but I wouldn't worry about it too much. All right, so let's take a look at it from a tracking map perspective, and this will give me a chance to kind of go back and look at the lifespan of Ernesto, which first, as you recall, came through this corner. Let's use red here, Mr. Mark. Came through the northeast corner of the Caribbean, bringing some pretty substantial impacts, widespread power outages, flooding. They even had excessive heat warnings for parts of Puerto Rico because it was so darn hot after Ernesto passed through. Then it made that turn, headed up towards Bermuda, went right over Bermuda where I was with our good friend and colleague, Mr. Mike Cornelius, working with another good friend and colleague of ours out there, Howard Simons. I'm serious. I want to thank these people because they made everything so much easier. We tested our new Starlink Mini out there. We did probably 90% of the work using Starlink, and the other 5%, the Wi-Fi at the Air BnB that we were using. A tremendous host there. His name is Joe. I'm going to put a link, by the way, to that Air BnB in today's description. And we paid. This is not a paid sponsorship. We were paying customers. It was just a wonderful Airbnb experience, and I want people to know about it. When you meet good people, there's just so much negativity out there. Everybody loves to tell you about the bad stuff. I want to tell you when things are really good, and that Airbnb experience was 2 thumbs up, 5 stars, everything you could ask for, in a wonderful area of Bermuda. So yeah, the eye went right over. We even found golf balls. Here's a couple of them, proof positive. Golf balls falling out of trees over on the golf course there between our Airbnb and the Pompano Beach Resort. I guess they got stuck up in the trees over the years, and then the hurricane comes along, shakes those trees, right, and then the golf balls litter the golf course. We picked up 11 or 12 of them, something like that, brought them all back, souvenirs. Next time I'm up at Fox Weather in New York, I'm going to take one with me. There's a couple people up there I know that would appreciate them. So Ernesto comes along, and then it moves on out, becomes a hurricane again, and we know the rest. It's sitting up here in the North Atlantic. Now, those swells are going to continue. They're going to subside over the next day or so, but those big ocean swells will continue. So again, please keep that in mind. Anytime we get a tropical system and people say it's a fish storm or it's out to sea, well, that might be true technically, but there are still the impacts from these big ocean swells that create rip currents and cause property damage. And like I said, even the unfortunate circumstance of loss of life, it's trying to make me disappear, in South Carolina. We hate to see that. We really do. So here's what it looks like from the satellite perspective. There's Ernesto. And then the rest of the tropical Atlantic for August 19th, that's looking pretty remarkable. Lots of dry mid-level air around it does appear. And you don't even have to look at a Saharan air layer analysis or a mid-level humidity chart or whatever. Just look at the satellite picture. These clouds out here, these all tell me stable, dryish air. No convection to speak of. Convection, of course, is thunderstorm activity. There's a little bit of convection right there. Some activity along the intertropical convergence zone. But otherwise, the tropical waves are coming off pretty far to the north. There is dust and probably frickin' sand coming out into the Atlantic there off the coast of Morocco. And we're just waiting. We're waiting to see when will this big flurry of activity come. Not that anybody wants it, but we do want to believe in the science. So it's kind of a double-edged sword, and we'll cross into that more in just a little bit as we move forward through today's update. All right, looking at Ernesto on a close-up vantage point, passing by the Canadian Maritimes. Could brush the areas, and this little island, I don't know what it's called. That's my fault. That's okay. I don't know everything. But yes, there could be some impacts up here, but they're pretty used to it. Not going to be a direct hit. And Ernesto will be transitioning into an extratropical system over the far reaches of the North Atlantic. Meanwhile, what is going on in the East Pac? Here's all of our systems. This is Gilma, and then more convection here. We don't have any convection to speak of in the Atlantic. It's all in the East Pac, but even the East Pac is not producing anything substantial. It's like globally, everything just seems to be in a funk. And I don't really know why. I'm going to just tell you, I don't know. I don't know what the holdup is. But hey, at least we're not having to deal with the ravages of severe hurricanes right now. But that might change. We just don't know for sure. We'll get into all of that as we go forward. Speaking of going forward, let's take a look at Hawaii here in the Central Pacific. There's the Hawaiian island chain. Here's our little disturbances coming through. It's hard to hit Hawaii. It really is. It's almost like magic. Look at this one. It's heading there, and then, boop, it just bounces off. It is. You usually have to have them come around from the south and then move up this way like Iniki did. Something similar to that back in 1992, I think it was. And, yeah, it's hard to hit Hawaii from the east, which is a good thing. But I just wanted to show you we're not ignoring Hawaii. And if you have plans to go out there, I wouldn't worry about any of this too much. Too far out into the future. Don't cancel. Don't even think about it. Go. If you got plans to go to Hawaii, keep them. All right, so seasonal forecasts from Colorado State and TSR, Tropical Storm Risk, Weather Tiger, everybody, all the people, the agencies that do these things, NOAA, they've all been very big, very robust. 23, 26, 30 name storms, whatever, high ACE counts, CSU ACE, the accumulated cyclone energy projected to be at 230. You know, you've seen it. We're supposed to have a historic hurricane season. That sawing is starting to get annoying, I'm going to tell you. So where are we? Where do we stack up to what we're seeing? Well, I'm glad you asked. And this is good because I want to cite some other people as I go through this. So this is our good friend Jeff Baradelli. And you know him as weather prof, like professor, right? Down in the Tampa Bay area. Interesting post here. I think the multitude of forecasts, he says, with very high expectations of the season have made us feel that this season hasn't been as active as expected. But so far, it's actually been pretty on par. Seasons as of late, and he makes a great point right here. I'm going to highlight it in yellow. Seasons as of late have been late bloomers, and that seems to be true, with activity ramping up later in the summer. So I got a text just a few minutes ago before my 37th attempt to do this video. I'm not even joking. The sawing was even worse earlier. I would start and, anyway. Matt texted me that maybe August 20th isn't August 20th anymore. And that might be right. It just seems like in recent years, the hurricane seasons have sort of ramped up into September instead of the last part of August. And there might be something to that, sort of a lag, or maybe we're shifting. You know, Michael in 2018, Category 5, October 10th, So maybe the peak times are shifting. That's a whole other update. We could spend an hour on it. But I'm not the only one that's noticing it. Matt also, right, from that text. And even Jeff here. Seasons as of late have been late bloomers. So there's something to that, perhaps. We'll have to see. Pretty small sample size to get too worked up about it. But yeah, it is interesting that maybe August 20th isn't the traditional start of the ramp up. Nevertheless, where are we? Let's check out this tweet from Michael Lowry. Tropical activity so far in 2024 is the third highest. That's saying something in the satellite era. I like that because you can't get those people, well, we didn't know 5,000 years ago. It's just crazy. Okay, you're right. So we'll just say the satellite era, 1966. All right, so the busiest since 1966. Even average activity from today forward would yield a hyperactive hurricane season. I tell you what, it is Monday and I'm just getting recovered from Bermuda, so bear with me. Yeah, it's been real busy. Third busiest since 1966, and Michael goes on to say, if we ended up August without another system, which we probably will, we'll see, we'd still be ahead of very busy seasons. And you ready for this? Like 2020 and 2010. And you might be yelling and screaming, wait, what are you talking about? Those had way more named storms. Yes, certainly 2020 did, but most of them were short-lived junk storms. I hate that term, but I just used it. They weren't high quality in the scientific scheme of things until we got to late August, and then we had very high quality, of course, meteorologically speaking, Laura. All right, so third busiest since 1966. And we'll see. So just keep that in mind. Interesting data out here. It's good to cite the data. And another way to look at the ACE from the Colorado State University dashboard here, well outpacing the norm, which is this line. We are well ahead of that. But if we don't have any activity in the next 10 days or so, we're going to eventually start closing in, and then we will be normal, and then you never know, might be below normal. Wouldn't that be something? But we'll see. It's hard to know for sure, because the last few years have been kind of funky. Seems like we're getting started later. And look at all the activity even in 2020 that happened after we had Laura. I mean, we went all the way into November, which brings me to this. This was the basis of all of this, right? We looked at the sea surface temperatures way back in the winter and in the spring, and we thought, wow, the current anomalies, the forecast anomalies, which are actually on par. This is exactly the way it was forecast to be, by the way, for the Atlantic. The La Nina really hasn't come on like some of the models were showing, but there is no El Nino, and nobody can argue that. So the anomalously warm tropical Atlantic through here. By the way, can you tell where Ernesto was? That's an easy one. Talk about taking heat out of the tropics. That's an easy one to visualize right there. But yes, we still have the very warm main development region through the Caribbean and Gulf of Mexico. No El Nino. The background state generally favorable, but it's like the switch just wants to wait until we get to early September, or maybe more like August 30th or something. Yeah, it's practically early September, but nothing else has changed. In fact, look at this here from Brian McNulty, Gulf of Mexico, you okay? And that's a great question. I've been pointing this out recently. The ocean heat content in the Gulf is ridiculous. Look at where we are. And this is all easily verifiable. I hate to even have to say that these days, but the data is not lying. It's the blue is where we should be. That's the average. And then this is where we are. And it is just so much warmer than it should be in the Gulf of Mexico, undisturbed. And I've been showing you that on the these charts here. Let's see where. Yeah, right here. Look at that huge area of 31, 32 Celsius. 31 creeping back up here down southwest of Florida. Yes, the Gulf of Mexico quite a bit warmer than we're used to seeing, and we have a long way to go. So, the evidence still suggests a very busy season ahead. Now, going back to this for a minute. The La Nina really hasn't jumped in the Pacific just yet. Out in the Nino 3 region, as we call it, there's some pretty cold anomalies there. Temperatures relative to average, cooler by a pretty good margin, but I think it's going to start really kicking in. The Hofmoeller diagrams here from Dr. Michael Ventris' website all of this, you're talking some serious easterly wind action. What do I mean by that? I'll show you. You get that easterly wind coming through, and when we say easterly, that means the wind is coming from the east. The trades down here, all of that blue and purple over on this chart is all through that area I just showed you. And that is very strong relative to average. These are anomalies. That's what that means. Down in the 850 millibar region, 5,000 feet in the atmosphere, that's going to jumpstart the La Nina, one would think. And then in the Atlantic basin, you have very little bit of that blue at all. A few surges that come off Africa or something. Everything else, though, the trades are generally lighter trades, warmer sea surface temperatures. All of that we see in the past is directly correlated. It's not 100%, it's not a 1-to-1, but it's close. Light trades in the tropics and the Atlantic, strong trades in the Pacific with La Nina developing, warmer than average everything in the Atlantic. The tropical waves are there. They're just a little bit far north right now. I just think once we get into September especially, and I know people go, oh, you keep hedging it. Hey, look, if we're wrong, myself, all of us that follow this stuff, we'll figure it out. And that's all. That's great news for the homeowners out there in the insurance industry, right? But if we're not wrong, you're going to want to know about it, and I'm very serious about that. Nothing that I'm seeing says that we're not going to have a big end. It's not even the end. We're just getting into the second half. 2/3 of the season, climatologically, still in front of us. Showed you the Gulf already, and let's look at the Atlantic. Very warm for the most part. There's Ernesto and what it's been doing, chiseling away. These are not anomalies, by the way. These are actual temperatures. But Ernesto cut through here and took those temperatures down just a little bit. Nevertheless, off the mid-Atlantic southeast coast, yeah, pretty good overall for late August. I'm going to try to get to the beach sometime this week now that those swells are going to die down. I can take the kids out there. I met Andrew Moore. We all had dinner at the Swizzle Inn. Great establishment there in Bermuda, not far from the Grotto Bay. They say that you swizzle in and you swagger out. Lots of t-shirts around the world with that very slogan. But yep, we had dinner with Andrew on Thursday night, and I met another videographer, storm chaser fella out there. First name, can't remember his last name. I think his name was Johnny. Anyway, sorry, reminiscing about my trip to Bermuda. But it was cool to be able to sit down with Andrew, who I've cited from time to time in a video, and he lives and works in Bermuda with his family. And he, too, is noting that, yeah, these tropical waves, I mean, look at that energy right there. That's kind of far to the north. Why am I circling it? He already did. But once that energy, that wave train, gradually sinks back southward again, and it's a natural progression, we should start to see more and more activity pick up. And I think that there is something to this lag of the last several years. I could spend some time, and I might work on it with some of my colleagues. Let's start to figure out, let's look at the last 10 years and how much has that August 20th bell really meant. Maybe I'll get Dr. Klotzbach. He might be on vacation somewhere. Hadn't seen any tweets from him lately. Nevertheless, this might be telling us something that, hey, there's just a little bit of a shift the last few years, and we call that temporal, right? Time in the overall geographic distribution of these tropical waves. And it's either something that's going to happen forever, in our lifespans anyway, or it's just temporary. We don't know. But boy, once the energy starts coming off at the proper angle, with all that warm water out there, we better be ready. That's the bottom line. None of that's changed, all right? So speaking of all that, let's wrap up today's long video here. At least the sawing has stopped. With a look at the next 2 weeks. Why not? Let me refresh this to make sure we have it all the way out to 384 hours. And once in a while, I'll show you all the way out to 2 weeks. Why not? Let's use yellow to make everything pop. Low relative humidity, dry air. Absolutely. Lots of dry air, even dry air in and around Ernesto, taking advantage of one little pocket of energy up there near the Gulf Stream. Otherwise, brown is more dominant than green on this map. Let's see how it changes. Oh, look, there's a pocket of moisture and a tropical wave. Very, very easy to spot these. They come off. There's one. There's another one. And then, wait, there's another one. So they're coming. Wait, there's another one. You get my drift? They're just coming out, though. I didn't mean to do that. They're just coming out into the Atlantic, and then they're just kind of dying off. But as we get into September, the overall background state will change. I'm pretty confident of it. It seems to always do that. And then when you add up everything that I've just shown you, this especially, I think that this is going to look a lot more active as we get into September and beyond. And then I'm going to tell you something. I'm really worried about the Caribbean and the Gulf mid to late September through October. We could have a very, very busy time of it. And I'm not saying this to keep people watching my videos or hyping anything. I really feel it. Like there's nothing that suggests anything any different. And again, the wonderful benefit is if I am wrong and all of these seasonal forecasts are wrong, that's great for homeowners and insurance industry and interest alike. Andrew Moore, he's in insurance and reinsurance there in Bermuda. Bermuda, a huge reinsurance industry area, right? So yes, if we're wrong, it would be very good for people. But if we're not, I want you to be ready. And so don't dismiss it and say, yeah, where's all the hurricanes? Everybody blew it. Well, we haven't blown it until it's over. All right? So keep that in mind. Keep yourselves watching and prepared, because that's what we want when it's all said and done. I like it that you watch the videos, but yeah, I don't have 1 million subscribers. It's not some ego booster. Whatever. I'm just doing what I do naturally, and I'm glad to have an audience to share it with. I appreciate that more than you know. All right? And then keeping you safe is the bottom line. And educated. Anyway, that's it from me for today. Have a great rest of your August 19th and a great rest of the week ahead. I'll be here all week. Each day I'll put a video update for you. Not as long as today's, obviously. Nevertheless, let's wrap it up. I'm Mark Sudduth from all of us at HurricaneTrack. Thanks for watching. I'll see you again tomorrow.